Wake up, everybody. Welcome into Redacted on this Tuesday. I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natali Morris.
And on this show, we cover the stories the mainstream media largely ignores, or we have to sift through a big pile of propaganda on a lot of it. We've got a lot of questions today, and this may be one of our busiest shows we've ever had today on this Tuesday, because just a few hours ago, a massive launch of pager explosions across the Middle East that tore through the hands and heads and hips of thousands of individuals in Lebanon and other areas, which we're still accounting for. Is this the first salvo in a massive escalation of war in the Middle East? We will talk about that.
Plus the Diddy indictment. It's gross. It's deep. You're going to have to sit through it because these are things we need to know. How deep does it go in the entertainment industry? We're going to take a look, you guys. Hold on. We're going there.
And new details in the Trump shooter and the CIA connections. This guy did not act alone. I think that's abundantly clear. We're going to look at some of the major new revelations as to how this guy was groomed, potentially by the intelligence state, whether it was the FBI, the CIA. How was this guy groomed? How was he there with thousands of dollars, being able to fly around in first class? How was he tipped off right with information on the Trump golf course? All of that, of course, is missing. Trump released a huge tax plan that no one is talking about. We're going to talk about that a little bit later in the show today. But also today, just Kamala Harris doing an interview with the Association of Black Journalists talking all about her tax plan. So no one, no one's covering Trump's economic policy, which I think could actually be considered revolutionary. We'll talk about that. But now the mainstream media trying to turn the page as quickly as they can away from Trump, get it focused on Kamala with only 48 days left until Election Day. So Welcome in, everyone, on this Tuesday. Busy show for you. David Rauch in our chat. I like him. David says, my house is where several of my friends come together to watch Redacted every Monday through Thursday. We have a game we play where we all put our bets on what color shirts you guys will be wearing. I'm sure it's going to be easy for you to pick which shirt I'm going to be wearing.
For Clayton, it's usually black. It's almost never not black.
That's right. So it's pretty easy. Hopefully I'm not the one that you're putting your bets on.
But I can help you game it. What do I get? I'll give you an inside track if you want. Tell you what I'm going to wear next.
Let us know where you're joining us from around the world. Hello over on Rumble. Hello on YouTube. Hello on X. Hello to our friends on BitChute as well. Good to see you. We've got a lot of news to get to today, but first
we want to tell you about our friends at 5G Free, because with global tension rising and nuclear safety concerns in Ukraine and abroad, the threat of nuclear incident is more real than ever. One of the largest nuclear plants is facing multiple threats, making these dangers more real now than ever. You probably have all the basics covered: food, water, first aid, but there's a critical gap in most people's preparedness, which is radiation protection. That's where RadioGuard ACE comes in. It's an FDA-approved treatment that's been part of the U.S. government's emergency stockpile since 2003. So what do they know that you don't? Well, RadioGuard ACE is now available to you. It's designed to trap and eliminate harmful radioactive materials from your body, ensuring you're protected when it matters most. So the emergency kit from Rumble Radiation brings this vital treatment to your home, along with thyroid protection, nausea medication, and a radiation monitor. So visit 5gfree.com and use the code Redacted, and you'll get 15% off. So learn about this. See if it's something you need in your house. Definitely the threat of nuclear warfare continues to escalate every day. You learn that on Redacted every week. So again, visit 5gfree.com. Use the code Redacted.
Well, if the Middle East isn't already descending into chaos, today is every evidence that it's about to even get worse, with a massive attack across Lebanon, with pagers exploding in the hands of Hezbollah officials, fighters, even ambassadors. And we're trying to piece all of this together right now. How was this pulled off? A massively sophisticated operation with thousands of people being injured, at least 8 killed as of right now that we know about. How did this happen? And what is going on in the Middle East with Israel and Lebanon? This is a tinderbox. We wanted to ask former UN Weapons Inspector Scott Ritter for his assessment on all of this, and who's been watching this very, very closely. Scott, first, just your reaction to this developing story.
Okay. Well, what did Hezbollah think was going to happen? I mean, we're in a situation where Hezbollah and Israel are in a war. We could call it a proxy war. We call it a hybrid war, whatever you want to call it. It's a conflict. Israel carried out an attack earlier this summer against a senior Hezbollah official in Beirut. Hezbollah responded by attacking Unit 8200, Israel's top secret signal intelligence unit, electronic warfare unit, cyber unit. According to news reports, they may have killed the commander of this unit and killed up to 26 others, wounded over 70 others. This attack against the pagers of these Hezbollah officials is an attack carried out by Unit 8200. That's the unit that does this. What did Hezbollah think was going to happen? You attacked Unit 8200. You think 8200 is just going to sit there and let nothing happen? They have responded in a dramatic way, in a decisive way. We don't know who, I think the reports are 1,500 casualties so far. Maybe the number will increase. These are, probably senior command and control people, mid-level command and control people. Who carries a pager? Not a fighter at the front. The people that carry pagers are people that, need to be contacted, need to respond. Logistics people, communications people, command staff. This is devastating for Hezbollah. But what did they think was going to happen? But that's not even the question we, the audience, should be asking ourselves. How did this happen? And I'm not talking about, the way that Israel pulled this off in terms of, infiltrating these pagers. These pagers apparently were just recently swapped out by Hezbollah.
Right.
Who was the purchasing agent? I mean,
Right.
First thing I would ask Hezbollah is buy better pagers, know your sources. But they, we know historically 8200 has used high explosive planted in cell phones to assassinate people. In 1996, one of the more dramatic examples of this was when a Hamas bomber known as the Engineer, they got a phone into his hands. He answered the phone, confirmed he was the guy. They blew his head off. Hamas, in attacking on October 7th, overran an Israeli intelligence base where they oversaw the technical penetration and the human penetration. They got the list of the Hamas people who were Israeli operatives. They were executed in the streets by Hamas. But they also found out how Israel was listening to the communications, how Israel had inserted cell phones into Hamas leadership. They swapped out their cell phones. This may have led to Hezbollah swapping out its pagers, realizing the potential of compromise. But now the pager type, I think it was a Motorola pager everybody's talking about. Does that mean that Israel was able to put high explosive into each one of these? The answer appears to be no. This appears to have been a much more sophisticated attack, meaning that Israel has singled out this kind of pager in a way to exploit it by getting the lithium battery to blow up, some sort of hack. If this is the case, that means Israel can kill anybody, anytime, anywhere in the world. Not just Israel, but the United States. Any nation that figures out this hack can now make the lithium battery in this device blow up as I'm on the phone. This is the kind of stuff that should send shivers down everybody's spine, because it's not just about 1,500 Hezbollah operatives that were hit. This is about every single human on the face of the earth that uses electronics that have a lithium battery. Because if you can hack a Motorola pager into blowing up, you can certainly hack an Apple iPhone or anything else. That means none of us are safe.
What Edward Snowden just tweeted coming in just moments ago, because these pagers went off in London. It wasn't just Lebanon. They were attacked all over the world. Edward Snowden tweeted just moments ago, what Israel has just done is via any method reckless. They blew up countless numbers of people who were driving, meaning cars out of control, shopping with your children or in the stroller, standing behind him in the checkout line, etc., indistinguishable from terrorism. He says, as information comes in about the exploding beepers in Lebanon, it seems now more likely than not to be implanted explosives, not a hack. Why? Too many consistent, very serious injuries. If it were overheated, batteries exploded, you'd expect many more small fires and misfires. So, and sources I've spoken to this morning have said that could have been in the works for a long time. to get these types of specific pagers in the hands of these individuals with explosives built in. So that doesn't make me feel any better, but
well, it makes me feel a little bit better, to be honest. Because,
I mean, I guess to know that they can't launch a lithium-ion battery attack at a whim,
well, now we
can bring down their.
We go back to the old Israeli practice. Now we're seeing, again, that's how they assassinated the engineer. They put explosives in his cell phone. That's how they've assassinated people over the ages, to get a device in the hands. But this shows something far more sophisticated. This isn't about inserting an individual device where you need it. This is about infecting the entire supply chain. This means that in order to do this, Israel was either at the source of production or somewhere in between. Because normally speaking, when you ship things out, there's going to be some sort of product control. How do you gain access to all of these pagers in a way that allows you to implant explosive in them and then have them disseminated on the market? This is a very serious thing. And the other thing I'll say is that for Israel to do this attack, it's exposing a capability. It's going to mean that everywhere around the world, supply chains related to electronics in the Middle East or around the world are going to have to be reverse engineered. Israel probably won't be able to pull this off again in terms of this scale. So this was a political decision by Israel to expose this capability. And it's a very crude one. And if they were blowing up in London, I mean, as you said, this is so early, I don't know what the hell's going on. But if they're blowing up in London, this is a terrorist attack against the United Kingdom. I can only pray that one blew up in the United States. I hope that whoever it happened to wasn't affected by this. But then the United States has to start treating Israel as what it is, a terrorist organization. The irony here is that Israel launched this attack against Hezbollah that it considers to be a terrorist organization using the tactics of terrorism. This is a flagrant crime. It's indiscriminate in nature, and we'll see if Israel will ever be held to account.
Earlier, you said, what did Hezbollah think was going to happen after it struck this Group 82? Well, what does Israel think is going to happen now that it has launched this attack and hit thousands of individuals in Hezbollah? What will the response look like?
Well, the response needs to be not just with Hezbollah, but as you said, this was an indiscriminate attack against non-Hezbollah targets. What did Israel think was going to happen in its response to October 7th? Do you think that the Israeli leadership sat there and said, by going into Gaza the way we're doing, we're going to trigger a massive international condemnation that turns world opinion against us, that enables the Houthi to carry out a blockade of our southern ports, that destroys our relationship with the world, that weakens us militarily? No, that's not. The Israelis don't think strategically like this. This attack, this pager attack, is going to have global consequences that are going to come back and haunt Israel down the road. This was a feel-good moment for Israel, but I can guarantee you, within a week, within a month, Israel won't be feeling good. First of all, Hezbollah is going to respond militarily. There will be an escalation that is designed to bring about pain and suffering on Israel, the equivalent of that which Israel has delivered on Hezbollah. Israel killed a senior Hezbollah leader in West Beirut. Hezbollah responded by attacking Unit 8200. Israel responded by blowing up the pagers of 1,500 Hezbollah officials. Hezbollah will respond by hitting Israel in a proportional manner. Proportionality means that 1,500 Israeli intelligence operatives, military people are going to have to be put at risk. It has to be a response of this nature. Meanwhile, the world is going to rally against Israel even further. Israel will be further down into the abyss of its own construction by the time this is all said and done.
The numbers right now, 2,750 people wounded as a result of these pager explosions across Lebanon, and 9 killed. So this number keeps going up.
Keeps going up.
This number keeps going. Yeah. I'll get you out of here on this, Scott, which is over the weekend we saw the Houthis fire a hypersonic missile at Tel Aviv. They could not shoot this down. They didn't shoot it down. They were incapable of shooting it down. The Jerusalem Press comes out and says that it wasn't hypersonic. Of course, it begs the question, then why didn't you shoot it down if it's not hypersonic? But I think all evidence to the contrary that it was a hypersonic missile fired at Israel. What do you make of the Houthi side of this and the hypersonic missiles fired into Tel Aviv?
Well, the Houthi announced that they had acquired hypersonic capability a while ago. They had done a series of tests, static tests and other tests associated with a hypersonic missile, which they then declared to be operational. I think this is that missile. It was fired. One, Israel didn't shoot it down. Now, Israel can play semantic games for its own domestic consumption, but the bottom line is the Houthi hit Israel with a missile possessing technical characteristics which make it impervious to Israel's air defense system. I don't believe that the Houthi built one missile. I think they have dozens, right, scores, maybe hundreds of missiles waiting. This was a signal to Israel because it's technology that is not unique to the Houthi. In fact, I believe that the Houthi missile probably is a reflective of technology that the Houthi acquired via Iran, the same kind of technology that was provided to Hezbollah. Hypersonic, solid rocket-fueled missiles with precision guidance capabilities that defeat the Israeli air defense system. The Houthi sent a signal on behalf of Iran and Hezbollah that should this conflict continue and should it escalate, that these are the missiles that will be hitting Israel in the future, and Israel has no defense against them.
Well, just when you think the news cycle couldn't get any crazier, here we go. Scott Ritter, thank you as always for joining us. We appreciate your insights and analysis. Thanks, Scott.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Scott. And Dan Cohen just tweeted moments ago, Jewish journalist and friend of the show, Dan Cohen, he just actually returned from that war zone, said Israel is pushing for the U.S. to join an all-out war against Lebanon and Iran. Overnight, Netanyahu added to the list of war goals, quote, the safe return of its citizens to their homes near the border with Lebanon, end quote. Hours later, thousands of beepers exploded in Lebanon in a massive terrorist attack targeting Hezbollah fighters and civilians alike. He says a close associate of Netanyahu credited Israel for the attack before quickly deleting his post. An Israeli group called Fighting for the North credits Israel for the attack and demands Netanyahu launch a full-scale war on Lebanon. We expect this to be the opening blow of a war in the north and not another one-off operation. However impressive it may be, this is an opportunity that must not be missed under any circumstances. So to launch a full-scale war against Lebanon and to push the United States into a war against Lebanon and Iran. So I'll ask you, Americans, do you want to go to war with Iran? Do you want to be involved in a Middle Eastern war where Americans will die? Israel is pushing for all-out war.
I mean, no, because look how dirty this can get. That means all of us at risk for our mobile devices blowing up while we drive, while we're in the grocery store, while we're walking around, not just bad guys, but collateral damage too. Who will raise their hand for that? Who says, yes, I feel motivated to make that kind of sacrifice for innocent civilians? Okay.
Let us know in the chat. Actually, maybe we put up a poll here. How many of you think Americans should die in the Middle East right now in a war against Iran or in a war against Lebanon? I mean, this is exactly what they're pushing for.
What's the point of Israel denying they did it? I mean, like, who are we going to blame? Like Motorola? Of course they did it. Like,
well, Israel. I mean, Netanyahu's own associates came out and said that, yes, Israel just carried this out, then deleted the post. So, I mean, look, any idiot out there knows who carried this out. So,
right, who else is motivated to do that?
Yeah.
So, okay, this is a wild story. It's awful, and. That's all I have to say. So we're going to go on to the next wild story that's awful, which is the Diddy indictment. It's
much bigger than just Diddy, right? I mean, this is when you see, we knew once this was all starting to unfold that this is really, he's like the Epstein of the music industry, but it's much, much deeper than just Diddy. It's how many people are involved in this with the sex trafficking ring, bringing, children in as like a honeypot to use against these producers and other individuals and athletes in order to blackmail them and so forth. But at the heart of it is children too. It's the sex trafficking of children coming across the border, being used for these purposes.
Incidentally,
allegedly.
Minors were not mentioned in this indictment, but the the Southern District of New York says they're not done yet. So we're going to look at this is their opening salvo, you guys. They say they have more. So we're going to take a look at, and also take a look at journalists who say, wait a minute, we've been following it. These pieces are missing. So we're going to look. I have sort of a silver lining take on it. It's a glass half full.
That's how I'm usually a glass half full kind of person. So let's see if that.
Okay, let's see what you think of my theory on this. But first, we want to tell you about our friends over at American Financing, because interest rate drop day is supposed to be tomorrow, you guys. Rates are now dropping into the 5s where they were in the 7s. So if you've been waiting to figure out how to get a hold of your finances, then maybe you should call American Financing. In just 10 minutes, you can learn what they have to teach, which is something wealthy people know, which is to take your bad debt and turn it into good debt. Switch out bad financial products for good. They have salary-based mortgage consultants that are helping homeowners like you tap into their home equity and get out of that high interest debt. They're saving their average customer $800 a month by doing this. And again, with rates dropping, it's going to get easier. It just takes 10 minutes to call them, and then you set aside the information they send you and take the time to learn this. If you start today, you could even delay 2 mortgage payments, and gosh, how much would that give you some breathing room? So call them right now at 866-890-8434 or visit americanfinancing.net/redacted. One more time, that's americanfinancing.net/redacted.
All right, our poll right now. Do you support the U.S. getting more involved in the Middle East? No, 92% of you, but 8% of you say yes.
Okay.
More involved in the 7. Now it keeps going between 7 and 8%. Who is the 8% that wants Americans to die in the Middle East?
That's our CIA audience.
That's our CIA Mossad audience, yeah.
Okay.
You always get about 8% Mossad.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. But maybe they are. Maybe there are people out there who legitimately think Americans should die in the Middle East. It'd be interesting dinner conversation. I don't, everyone's entitled to their own opinions. I just would be really curious what justification you have for the Americans dying in the Middle East. It'd be interesting to hear.
All right. Here's dinner conversation we won't be having tonight when our children get home. We're going to talk about the Diddy story. I think I should put a disclaimer on this. I didn't want to do it, and Clayton made me do this story. So
yes.
We're going to do it, and we're going to take a look at it, and it's yucky, you guys. So you got to put on your big boy pants to see this stuff. I'm ready for further questions of what's left out, what the government knows and doesn't know, but we're going to go through it. So here we go. Sean Diddy Combs was arrested by Homeland Security agents at a New York City hotel on Monday, and the indictment was unsealed this morning. Today, that's Tuesday. And you guys, this stuff is dark and it runs deep, as in every song you may have ever liked in your life that you listen to on the radio may be connected to a demonic sex ring. Yes. So brace yourself. This is the worst case scenario. Okay.
Okay.
Right, you're upset about this that maybe there's music that's not connected to this. You think that your taste is not engineered.
I listen to a lot of 80s music. I listen to a lot of jazz. So hopefully there's not crazy.
Okay.
Diddy
I like a lot of polka. Hopefully there's no demonic polka rings, but we'll see. That's true.
I love Pink Floyd. I hope they're not associated with this in any way.
Okay. Well, we're going to see. So brace yourself. The government has thrown the book at Diddy for prostitution, coercion, enticement to engage in prostitution, narcotic offenses, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. All of that is listed in this indictment. Here's what it looks like if you want to take a look for yourself, so you know I'm not making anything up. Now, not listed here is anything related to minors, and we're going to get to that in a second. Worth mentioning, though, that this is what the government alleges. This is what they think they can successfully prosecute. They present evidence to a grand jury, and the grand jury decides if they can arrest this person and move the case forward. Now, Combs will have the chance to defend himself, and his lawyer says that he's innocent of all of this. So if he fights this and says, I didn't do it, the government will say, well, here's a big steaming plate of evidence. And so will he actually do that? The lawyer says he will fight like hell to get his client released on bail. That's not likely, but we'll see. I mean, it would be a bajillion dollars. I would think they've already taken his passport. The government says they have copious amounts of evidence since their extensive raid on his properties and his electronics. Here is prosecutor Damian Williams summarizing that evidence.
During those searches, agents seized evidence of the crimes charged in this indictment. They seized firearms and ammunition, including 3 defaced AR-15s and a large capacity drum magazine. They also seized evidence of the freak-offs, electronic devices that contain images and videos of the freak-offs with multiple victims. And they seized cases and cases of the kinds of personal lubricant and baby oil that Combs' staff allegedly used to stock hotel rooms for the freak-offs, more than 1,000 bottles altogether. Here are some of the items that we recovered during the searches. As you can see here, this is a drum magazine, large capacity, and it contains, I believe, 59 rounds. I mentioned as well, we recovered 3 AR-15s. This is a close-up shot of one of the AR-15s, and you can see right here, the serial number has been thoroughly defaced. Another picture of more ammunition and parts of 2 AR-15s right there.
So people in the chat are saying freak off. What did he say? Freak off?
Oh yeah.
So
okay.
that's in the indictment.
I'm going to show you what that is right now.
At first, I heard free Goths, and I was like, is that like Visigoths or the I was like literally thinking like Germanic tribes of medieval, but okay, freak off.
Yeah, freak offs. And
freak offs. Okay, here we go. Let's let him explain it. You don't need to. The prosecutor does a pretty good job. Go ahead.
As alleged, Combs used force, threats of force, and coercion to cause victims to engage in extended sexual performances with male commercial sex workers, some of whom he transported or caused to be transported over state lines. Combs allegedly planned and controlled the sex performances, which he called freak-offs, and he often electronically recorded them. The freak-offs sometimes lasted days at a time, involved multiple commercial sex workers, and often involved a variety of narcotics, such as ketamine, ecstasy, and GHB, which Combs distributed to the victims to keep them obedient and compliant. As alleged, when Combs didn't get his way, he was violent, and he subjected victims to physical, emotional, and verbal abuse so that they would participate in the freak-offs, and that Combs hit, kicked, threw objects at, and dragged victims, at times by their hair. On one occasion in March of 2016, that conduct was captured on video and later reported in the media. Specifically, Combs kicked, dragged, and threw a vase at a victim in a Los Angeles hotel when the victim was attempting to flee. As alleged, these assaults often resulted in injuries to the victims, which took days or weeks to heal. In addition to the violence, the indictment alleges that Combs threatened and coerced victims to get them to participate in the freak-offs. He used the embarrassing and sensitive recordings he made of the freak-offs as collateral against the victims. And the indictment alleges that he maintained control over the victims in several ways, including by giving them drugs, by giving and threatening to take away financial support or housing, by promising them career opportunities, by monitoring their whereabouts, and even by dictating their physical appearance. Because of all of this, the indictment alleges that the victims did not believe they could refuse Combs without risking their security or facing more abuse. The indictment also alleges other acts of violence undertaken by Combs and others, including violence against witnesses to his abuse, kidnapping, and arson.
Okay. So
the least of it seems to be the guns. Like, who cares about the guns at this point?
it was just the method to which he kept all that going. I mean, when you have so many sex orgy parties that you have a name for them, like, do you put that in your calendar? Like, hey, I'm going to need to clear a few days for a freak off. Can you please? And it was so organized that he had his staff setting it up.
Yes.
Like, I need all the baby oil.
Well, that's
and
my
the
thing.
wipes.
Who on his staff is like in charge of the cases of baby oil?
And then they would go in and clean it up afterwards. Now, it was such an exertion for these
victims.
Victims that they were just, I guess, continually graping without a G, that they had to have IVs. In fact, here's what the government says is that after these freak-offs, Combs and the victims typically received IV fluids to recover from the physical exertion and drug use. So not only did they have all this set up, they had a freak-off kit that included IV for Combs himself because it was such an Olympic event. It's wild. Now, the government says that they have seen this for themselves. We heard about these in other court cases, but the government says they've seen it based on what they seized in the raids. Now, as a taxpayer, this is when we need to acknowledge that we appreciate law enforcement because they watched this and they took action. So at least we can give credit where credit is due. They say, again, that this is the stuff of nightmares. But important question is, how long have they known? Because this has been going on allegedly since at least 2008. Someone in the chat brings up a good point. Remember when J-Lo says she didn't know that he was involved in gang activity, but she was in and around a shooting when she was dating him in the 1999 and 2001 to 2001, I believe. So some people knew he was involved in some bad stuff for a very long time. Who, why, and who was kept from it? Now, interestingly enough, he was arrested on September 15th, 2024. 1 year ago, September 15th, 2023, he was in New York City getting the key to the city from Mayor Adams. Watch this.
He already has the keys to some pretty exclusive places, and now Sean Diddy Combs can add New York City to that list. It's Diddy Day in the city. Videos have been playing on the Jumbotron for TSX Broadway, and the crowd waited. Then around 11:30, the doors opened for the mayor and the artist.
The bad boy of entertainment is getting the key to the city from the bad boy of politics.
I want to thank y'all for this honor and just recognizing me being from New York, giving me the key to the city. Diddy finally has the key to the city.
Today's event coincides with the release of his new album, The Love Album, Off the Grid.
Okay, I wonder if that key works on jail cells. They might want to make sure that's not the case. That aged fast and rotten, didn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, on to the major piece of this. Who helped him? Because obviously you need a staff to hold freak-offs and to get people in there and to clean it up and give you all your props. Well, the government says he did have a lot of help from people both known and unknown, they say, participating in unlawful and other activities related to his affair. Now, no one else is named in this indictment, not his sons, not his bodyguard or anyone yet. But they say they're just getting started. But we can put some things together based on other cases against Combs, most famously the Lil Rod case, Rodney Jones' lawsuit against P. Diddy. Now, his bodyguard, Fahim Muhammad, is referred to many times in that case, which is still ongoing. He was the head of Combs' security, and he was known as his fixer because he had connections within law enforcement. What they said is if someone got killed, if someone got abused, if someone got hurt, if someone got in any trouble, Mr. Muhammad could fix it, they say, because he had the power to disappear people and problems. Well, who was this Mr. Muhammad? Ian Carroll, friend of the show, has been looking into this for months, and here's how he describes this.
One of the ways that Diddy had law enforcement under control was through his chief of security, Fahim Muhammad, who the whole staff was allegedly told to contact if anything ever went wrong with police or law enforcement, and he would be the fixer that would make it all disappear. Well, Fahim Muhammad is the former head of security for Michael Jackson. This kid had just graduated college with like a business degree, and he became the head of security for the King of Pop at age 21 or 22. And then, whoopsies, that same year, head of Pop died. This guy was second on the scene. And then his very next job, after failing, was to become the head of Diddy's entire operation. Think about it. The head of security in a blackmail ring needs to know all the dirt, otherwise he's not securing shit. Diddy formed his record label in the first place with a lot of help, basically being selected by Clive Davis, who's got a lot of mob ties and other stuff in his history. But he's been running huge portions of the music industry for before we were all born. We're talking back to signing names originally like Janis Joplin, Pink Floyd, Aerosmith, Earth, Wind & Fire. I say all of that to just show you the scope that this is not just one rapper doing bad things. This is the whole music industry. This is how it runs. Diddy is not an isolated incident. He is the status quo. And chances are he was not the only blackmail ring operating in the music industry.
You guys. Okay.
And there's a lot to dig into with Fahim as well.
Let's just go a little bit deeper, right? Because actually Ian Carroll's work on Fahim Muhammad, we're going to talk about that more, is how I became aware of his work, because his connection to Michael Jackson, which he lays out in this video. I just want to show it to you. Screenshot this and watch it later because it's wild. This was published in March and it raises more questions than we have answers to. Makes me want to apologize to Michael Jackson for believing smear campaigns about him. Now, more about this Mr. Muhammad. Diddy himself shared this last year. Mr. Muhammad bought land for his son on the southern border, right next to the border wall. Why? Because that's a good place to get people to participate in your freak-offs. Freak-offs, right. Presumably, right? We don't know. Now, here was a local CBS station in San Diego covering it last year. Now, keep in mind, what they're saying is Diddy told us that this guy on his staff bought this southern borderland, and they're like, let's go take a look. Watch how this video ages, which is still live on the CBS station. Watch. We're going to watch it in its entirety.
40 acres of land in San Diego County. That's what one dad gave his son for his 13th birthday.
He posted about it on social media, and their story went viral. Rapper Sean Combs even posted about it. CBS 8's Anna Laurel went to Boulevard, that's about an hour east of our newsroom, to see what they're going to do with all that land.
We're not just out here in the middle of nowhere. Look how close we are to the border wall with Mexico. Now, when we were driving out here, all I saw were a bunch of boulders and a few trees. But when Fahim Muhammad came out here, all he saw was potential.
We see clear space that we uninterruptedly we can enjoy nature.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Uninterrupted.
Especially growing up in the city, a congested city like LA. When we're out here, I mean, it's totally different.
Fahim Muhammad bought 198 acres out here in Boulevard to get away.
It's real quiet.
The border wall is right behind them, you guys. The border wall.
He lives in Los Angeles and runs a real estate business that buys and rebuilds properties in the south side of Chicago. He says to create a better living situation for the black community there.
Based on what's happening with this renovation right here.
His company, Oasis Investment Group, even teaches people home ownership.
These are people that have had families on government assistance for years, and now they're actually enrolling in courses to learn how to buy their own homes.
Fahim says his mom taught he and his siblings how important it is to own your own property and to help their community. So when his son Fahim recently turned 13, he gave him 40 acres.
I thought it would be a great opportunity to teach him a life lesson about the value of land.
And they're teaching other kids from LA these lessons too.
So all them regular rocks you picked?
They bring inner city kids out here to hike, ride ATVs, and build campfires. You can tell how much their family loves it when I ask them what it's like out here at night.
Amazing.
It was fun.
You get full view of the stars. It's like,
because like there's no city lights out here, so you get to no pollution, stuff like that. So you get to see like clear sky. You can see all the stars and stuff. It was fun.
13-year-old Fahim has some ideas for his property.
You could build like ATVs like around like, the whole thing. It's like wants to build a zip line from the mountain.
And even though they're right beside the border wall, they've had no problems. Out here, these city kids enjoy
no problems.
Their own private
getting victims.
You got fresh water, you got clear skies. At night, you can see all of the stars, the moon, the sunrise is beautiful.
In Boulevard, this is Anna Laurel for CBS 8.
So, I spoke to former 24-year veteran of the Customs and Border Protection who was stationed right there. Okay, and JJ Carroll told me today. He said no one lives in Boulevard except longtime border residents and people wanting to be criminals. He said, "Quote: Would you ever buy your son land on our border? Crime, violence, rapes, murders, drug cartels, human smuggling cartels, all day, all night on your property."
No, not unless you like those things.
Right, unless that's part of your business plan.
Right.
Right?
I don't think
really
so.
Hate your kid.
Right. You want a timeshare in Boulevard, California, right on the border wall? where cartels are bringing kids across right there for you. I mean, it's a perfect opportunity. Buy up the land.
Now, that video is still live on CBS 8's YouTube page. I feel like I could show it to you. I should show you the landing page in case you want to find it yourself, because they presumably have not realized what they have there as a feel-good news piece is probably evidence of human trafficking. If they were good reporters, they would know that the man they just featured here is named in the Lil Rod lawsuit for being Diddy's fixer in a sex ring. So maybe they should at least put some kind of note on that video or follow it up. I left a comment
I'm
there.
glad it's still there.
Alerting them to it.
Most of the time, these news organizations try to hide the fact and they delete it and get rid of it.
Oh, I downloaded it. So
we have
there
it.
we
We
go.
have it saved. Yeah, don't
okay, so what we're dealing with here is deep and extensive and an old conspiracy, not a theory, a real conspiracy to sell your soul to the devil to become famous in the music industry. And who else is connected? Well, Lil Rod's lawsuit names Cuba Gooding Jr. as an active participant in the freak-off parties. Yeah, it also mentions Usher. We also know that Combs has produced other big acts such as Mary J. Blige, Lil Kim, Biggie Smalls. We know that he dated Jennifer Lopez. Maybe that's why she's so keen to get her divorce in the headlines right now, to sort of divert from the fact that she was associated with him over 20 years ago. Now, Lucian Grange and Universal Music were originally named in the Lil Rod lawsuit, but they were removed as defendants, and the government in the federal indictment does not mention them. But Prosecutor Williams does say that the government is not done here. In fact, he makes it seem as though they are just getting started. So perhaps they will. The government says they have enough here to keep Combs behind bars for a lifetime. They're asking him to forfeit pretty much all of his possessions. The big question here is, how deep will this go, and will Combs live to tell? Will he live to name names? Since he is essentially the Epstein of the music industry, will we ever get a client list, or will that, like the Epstein list that is buried with him, fizzle out and die? Now, my sort of silver lining here is that maybe this is the government trying to make it right. Maybe if we can find a connection between Epstein and Combs, which it seems like won't be too hard to find, then we get it all. Maybe the bad guys sort of took it from the good guys, and the good guys are saying we get another chance with Diddy. How about that? Maybe, right?
Maybe.
This is a big fat maybe. Combs' lawyer says that, again, he's going to fight for his release. But if he does not get released, he should insist on round-the-clock cameras in his holding cells. Maybe we should all want to watch that just to keep this guy alive. The rest of us should want this too, because we need to see how deep it all goes. And in the meantime, I'm driving in silence. I never want to listen to commercial music again. I don't know what to do with this. This is just dirty and awful. And you know that what we get to see is only a sliver.
I'll sing you a song.
I mean, I would be surprised though if anything happened to him, because he's quote unquote new money. And where Epstein was dealing mostly with like the old money, like the more like political influencers and power, where like the entertainment industry, like it could very well be that they're gonna throw the book at him and make sure he goes to jail and be like, see, we do go after these people, so that they don't have to go after the people that actually have the power, so they can just go after these guys and make an example of them, rather than have to deal with the Epstein blowback.
Yeah, that's
and the much deeper connections here. Like I'm not saying that he's a good guy, but that he would become the fall guy in this, the sort of the scapegoat, and then all of the other people that we were wondering if they'd be a part of this indictment are not. Yeah. They're not listed here. So does he take the fall for this? And is this like a CIA operation? They're like, we're going after this guy so that this story gets buried.
Right.
We're able to bury all the rest of this information. Especially if there's some kind of a deal worked out. Then this stuff will always be buried.
Well, yeah, I mean, I do actually want his lawyer to keep saying he's innocent and we're going to fight it so that we see everything that the government has found. Then the more they fight, the more we get to see. If he takes a plea deal, we don't get to see that evidence. This doesn't play out in front of us. I'm going to hold out that this is the tip of the iceberg, and we do have good forces trying to root this out and save people from this ever happening again. But I mean, I don't know, like, who comes up with the idea for a freak off? Is that something that's been passed down from previous generations that have sold their soul to the devil in order to be famous? Right. And there are a lot of people that their names come up as they were made famous because they were connected to these dark force type ceremonial. I read this whole thing today about, I don't want to name, I'm not going to name names right now because I don't want to allege anything else. But you think about how these people are given fame and other people who are just as talented working for it but will not sell out. And in all industries, how deep does it go? Does it go into, movies, TV, music, news industry, that kind of thing? It's deep and dark. And so, okay, we got some of it. Some people have been waiting for years to see this. And so this is what we got right now.
Well, and also, it could be seen as a distraction, a sudden distraction from like looking more deeply into the CIA connections of the Trump assassination, the second round of the Trump assassination, and all of that, trying to distract you from that. So we're not going to be distracted from that. In fact, we're going to talk about that next here on the show because there's some stunning new details about the shooter, the alleged shooter in the second round of Trump assassination plot attempt at the golf course. We're going to look more deeply at that. We're also going to take some of your super chats here. We'll talk a little bit about that coming up here in just a second. But hey, tomorrow is a huge day because the Federal Reserve set to cut interest rates. How much will it be? We don't exactly know. Will it be the first of 4 rate cuts this year? This will devalue the U.S. dollar. We are at a tipping point moment right now for the U.S. dollar. That's why we're big proponents in owning actual things like real estate, gold, silver, tangible items like that. I know we talk a lot about gold on this show. Gold just hit a new all-time high on the threat of a rate cut. We didn't even see the rate cut yet. And then suddenly we see a rate cut. We saw the ECB rate cut. So again, just the threat of a rate cut sent gold skyrocketing. Silver, though, also a fantastic investment and relatively inexpensive compared to gold right now. But we just bought a bunch of gold and silver. About 60% silver, 40% gold right now. And it's a hugely important industrial metal. Silver is, of course, it's everything from phone batteries to electronics, solar electrics, but of course, it's also a commodity. Our friends over at Lear Capital can help you get set up right now and actually investing in precious metals. You can have it stored off-site. You can buy gold bullion. You can have it stored off-site or shipped right to your home, whatever you want to do. They can help you get set up and do that. They're an American company. You will talk to Americans on the phone when you interact with them. So go to LearRedacted.com. They have a free guide you can download. They have a bunch of different free guides, but when you're on the phone with them, you can ask them for their silver guide, which can go deeply into how silver is used across the board and why it's such a precious commodity right now. Also, you can grab their self-directed IRA guide as well. But give them a call, 1-800-613-3557 for your free guide. And also go to LearRedacted.com and check it out. Go to LearRedacted.com. There's no obligation to purchase anything. Just talk with them, have a conversation with them, and see if it is a fit for you to start investing in some precious metals, especially if you've got U.S. dollars in a bank account. That's LearRedacted.com. Was Ryan Routh, the suspect in the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, groomed by the CIA? Well, we're learning a lot more about this clown this morning, including that he had a book out that you can read if you'd like, his self-published book. It's called Ukraine's Unwinnable War, in which he urged Iran to assassinate Donald Trump. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. The very first Twitter account that followed his Twitter account is an ex-CIA agent. Was this his handler? We don't know. The deep state constantly uses useful idiots like Ryan Routh. So what do we know about the CIA and how the CIA deploys these useful idiots? Let's ask a former CIA agent. Michael Scheuer spent 22 years working at the CIA. He's written 4 books on how America needs to get out of these conflicts around the world, including Ukraine and the Middle East, and focus instead on the United States of America. That has to piss off a lot of people at the CIA, and that's why we'd love to have Michael on the show. Michael, welcome back. Good to see you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me.
So just when you started to see these details emerging about Ryan Routh, he's not some just random lone gunman guy with an axe to grind. All of these connections are starting to emerge. Did that surprise you, and what do you make of it?
Well, I don't think it can surprise us too much, and I think most Americans may be surprised by it, but it's simply because the media doesn't cover it. Both the United States Special Forces and the CIA's paramilitary groups are one of their major jobs is training foreigners who we want to help win or want to do a particular job for us. There's a lot of hoo-ha about special forces, paramilitary forces in the United States. They can't win wars. Their fighting is important in certain tactical instances, like killing bin Laden, if that happened. But what they mostly used for is for training foreigners in the Ukraine, in Vietnam, everywhere in the world, that there is a chance for the federal government in this country to get us involved in somebody's cause that they like. Those people are there. And grooming is mostly just, training. They become proficient in arms, proficient in tactics. But personal friendships is an enormous amount of espionage. And you recruit people as your agents at the agency, at the Defense Intelligence Agency, at the Special Forces. One of the characteristics you're looking for is an ability to project themselves as friends, as colleagues. And so it's not all that a complicated process. It's expensive. And sometimes it doesn't work. If you bet on the wrong horse, like this character in Florida, you put a whole lot of money and a whole lot of time into something that didn't work. But that's basically the way it goes. Grooming, I guess grooming is a good enough word for it. You're grooming people to be fighters first, clever people tactically, and most of all, loyal to their backers. So it's kind of an espionage development of a person, but it's also a military one. And, languages are always a problem. You're never quite sure about what's going on around you. And so the idea that people can become investors in their own work is possible. But also someone you trained 3 years ago, you may run into a situation where you have a use for them now. And with the money that any U.S. government agency can offer for a job, whether it's gathering intelligence or killing somebody, those people generally are going to be it's going to be hard for them to refrain from doing our bidding.
One of the things that emerged with this guy almost immediately was the scrubbing of his social media accounts. They were removed, edited, deleted, and then we found information that was then post-added to certain articles from weeks ago. And you can see this by going through the Wayback Machine, that things have been manipulated about his record and his history. It's all very interesting. And would that be something the CIA would also do and be a part of when you're grooming someone, using someone like this, is really try to use the internet and make sure that the narrative is out there correctly?
Well, certainly they would use it, yes. I have to say I left in 2004, which was a little bit before the devastatingly effective way people can control your thoughts or your ideas or project a picture of you on the internet today and social media. So I would think today that would not be a problem. It's a little bit hard for me to believe that someone traceable to the agency would use their name or a name that's known to be used by them in terms of going to social media. But I can't say that couldn't happen. I just would find it surprisingly bad tradecraft.
One of the other things that has emerged that they know, according to sources, Ryan Routh visited Fort Bragg dozens of times in the past few years, which is where the U.S. Army Psychological Operations Unit is located at Fort Bragg. What do you make of that?
Well, I'm not sure this guy is very much engaged in psychological operations, but what he went there for was that's the home of our special forces. And he might have trained there with them, or a refresher course perhaps in the last several years. But he's clearly on the side of what the Defense Department and the president want, which is the war in Ukraine. And so he probably would have been welcome there. I think, the other thing you should think about, not you, but I mean generally people should think about, is that the man claims to have an income of only $3,000 a month, and yet he flew first class from Hawaii to Florida, which is about, I heard this morning on the radio, about $7,000. He was arrested at one point for controlling an undefined weapon of mass destruction. And the judge gave him a misdemeanor for that, which is it screams that someone from Washington intervened in the thing to say, he's our guy, we need him, don't put him away forever, which probably would have been the punishment. So there's red flags all over the place. I think it's a disgrace, but it's appalling but not surprising, Clayton. It's the way the game is played these days.
Deeply disturbing on a day when we have this major attack against Hezbollah in Lebanon and the United States agitating for war both against Russia and Iran. And then conveniently, over the past few weeks, we've heard in the mainstream media that they've broken up a cell that was trying to assassinate President Trump. These were a Pakistani who had ties to Iran. And now we have a book that he's written where he's asking Iran to assassinate Trump. It just all sounds so convenient.
Oh, it is. Don't think for a moment that it's all coincidence. The one thing you learn, I learned in my life at least, and I learned especially at the agency, is coincidences are very, very rare. You have a coincidence in your life where you forget to put the coffee pot under the perker, and so you get it all over your floor or your counter. But in the real world, coincidences are not very common. This thing was played through. He had a car with stolen plates. He had a rifle with an obliterated identification number on it, and he was not from Florida. Serial number, yes, sir. And he was not from Florida, so he could not have bought that rifle in Florida, being an out-of-stater, unless they had given him Florida documents, which is not impossible. And he could not have brought it on the airplane. So he had lots of help. And he also had, apparently, I think the strongest guess is he had someone in Trump's entourage, because they say the golf date was kind of a spontaneous thing, early in the morning or early in the afternoon, and so there was not a lot of time. So somebody close to him
leaked it,
or leaked that it was going to happen at some point tomorrow, and then they refined the time when they found out exactly when he was going. But it's there's CIA people probably around Trump. There's FBI people around Trump. There's good and bad about that. If they're loyal, it's fine. If not, they're an enormous danger. There's politicians around the time, and a lot of politicians say they like him, but they just as soon see him dead, because if he gets into power, it's going to upset the gravy train for them. And we have almost unlimited numbers of Democrats who have called for, Jamie Raskin says we have to have civil war conditions if Trump wins. One of them called today, and I don't remember the man's name, but that he needs to be eliminated. There's been this has been a current refrain in the Democratic Party and in the mainstream media since Trump entered the race in 2016. So it's hardly surprising. What is surprising is the failure to protect him. Not only is he a presidential candidate, but he's the presumed next president at the time, given the information we have from polling and that kind of thing.
The polling right now looks absolutely like a landslide in the Electoral College right now for Trump, in Trump's favor. They are deeply scared about this. There are,
and as they should, they are an evil criminal bunch, and the price for that should be prison, and in some cases, if you can prove treason, which is hard to do, hanging. I would prefer public hanging to make the message clear to a lot of people that we don't fool around with overthrowing presidents or killing presidents or overthrowing governments. We're in the middle, Clayton, in a way, of a very fine civics lesson for the American people about how this system needs to be cleared up. And whether that message comes through loud and clear, I don't know. But I think this is a key break in the deep state's armor, because the signs are everywhere. It's going to be hard to corral them first and then bury them, because they seem to be popping up with some regularity. And I have to say the policeman and the police officer, the chief in Florida really called, without being very blatant about it, really called the tune, that there's too many things here to make it a lone gunner.
Right. I think it's clear. You know, when we first started reporting this story, someone in our chat room said they're going to make it a conspiracy. So we're not making it a conspiracy. All of these signs point that it is a conspiracy. And the real concern...
Road to know what's going on here, sir. You know, you don't have to be Sherlock. It is clear as hell. And one of the reasons they're screaming about it so much is because they know it's clear as hell.
And I'm concerned as we head into October that they're not finished yet trying this. They've tried it in Butler.
They may be finished, Clayton, with shooters, but not with a truck bomb or an aerial weapon of some kind. And they can blame it on anybody. They've got all the gangsters in the country they need, and they can set them up. The FBI specialty is setting up Muslim terrorists. They get one not very bright Muslim suggest an operation. He goes out and gets some dumber Muslims, and then at the last moment, the FBI picks him up and calls it a victory against terrorism. So there's lots of other options out there. And it depends on how many people they're willing to kill as to what option. Right now, they seem focused just on him. But if it's his family, if it's his children, if it's a bunch of people who just work for him, I think there's no hesitation on the part of the Democrats to preserve what they have to killing more than one person.
It's deeply disturbing. And when you know the history of what they've done to JFK, and what they've done to Martin Luther King, you know, the list is fairly endless at this point, and they will not stop. I hate to keep saying it, but you're seeing it. The evidence is overwhelming at this point that they will do whatever they can to keep Trump from winning. They're going to pull out all the stops.
It all flows, Clayton, from the decision made after the Second World War that we were going to control the affairs of the world, and that we were going to call the tune for third world countries and European countries. It all comes out of war. Americans are so used to war that they allow the government to do whatever it says is necessary to do overseas. Ukraine, we don't have a single interest in Ukraine except for what the elites want. They want what the guy from South Carolina, the senator, said, $12 billion worth of rare minerals in the ground there. We want to push the Russians into starting a war, and we succeeded in doing that. So the American people really have to get the idea that we don't have presidents anymore. We have warlords. Warlords who can take this country, all 360 million of us, into a war, a little one or a huge one, anytime he wants, because the Congress has abdicated its sole responsibility under the Constitution for declaring war. They pass a bill that says we give you the power. Well, that's not delegatable according to the Constitution, but it allows the Congress to say, well, we warned him against it, but he did it anyway. Or if we win, the Congress can say, hurrah, we supported him and he wouldn't have done this without us. No good. We have not had a constitutional conflict in this country since December the 8th, 1941. They all have been anti-constitutional, non-constitutional, in fact. Much more dreaded power than a simple, a corrupted policeman or a corrupted general or whatever, or something like that, a normal everyday thing. When you have a president that can take you to war without any checks or balances, and to accelerate that war as Biden and his people have done gradually in the Ukraine, you're not a free country. You're in the chains of a warlord. And it's time that Americans face it.
And hope Americans wake up. I hope people vote. I hope we can make a massive change in this country. Michael Scheuer, we appreciate you joining us. I think your expertise in this is second to none, and we are in very, very scary times as they try to drag us into war with Russia and Iran simultaneously. Michael, you're right. Great to see you.
A pleasure, sir. Thank you kindly for having me.
My pleasure. Thanks so much, Michael. Appreciate it. And I guess we could bring up the poll here. We still have it going for after just talking to Michael here. Do you support the U.S. getting more involved in the Middle East? 92% of you on our YouTube poll say no. 8% say yes. So you guys can still vote. About 8,400 votes right now.
Huh?
Still 8%. You're always going to.
I have to think those are trolls. Some of them, like people are just like,
maybe someone just being like, I'm just going to be a dick.
I mean, but
disruptive.
I don't know, because it's like, is with people like, they're just people that will support Israel no matter what, and I think that's those people. Like, it just wouldn't matter what they did.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, there'll be people like a story that really is not about. It's about going into a massive war, but they'll still say, you need to get the other side of the story out there, of course, which is what we do. But what other side is there to a massive war? I mean, we've been covering it for years on this show. I mean, it goes back to 1947. This is a tinderbox waiting to happen. And do you want the United States has no vested interest in that area at all? There's none, and you can't point to any. Just read John Mearsheimer's great book on the subject. There's none. He couldn't find any. If you can say that there's a vested interest that Americans should go die in the Middle East, I'd like to hear it. Like, what is the incentive for that to happen? American sons and daughters right now. $35 trillion in debt. By the way, did you guys see this today? So CNN today, of course, there's been no coverage of this by the left-wing media. None at all about Trump's tax plan and his new economic plan, because they've all been focused on Kamala Harris, which is expected, right? It's a liberal media. So today on CNN, they had a whole panel discussion, the Association of Black Journalists asking Kamala Harris. She rolls out her tax plan. She waited today to announce like big pieces of her tax plan, $6,000 family tax credit, like all of these things. Of course, it's all over CNN. They're carrying this live, and that's what they do. Do you guys know anything about Trump's economic plan? Well, it's actually pretty stunning, and I spent the weekend going through these notes. I co-authored a new report on this. You guys, it's totally free. You guys can go download it. I encourage all of you to read it because it's actually really stunning. The Trump economic plan and tax plan is probably the most important news economically that we could be covering here, but it's been totally covered up by another assassination attempt on his life, and it's being ignored by the mainstream media. But of course, it's been buried under all this, and the Diddy story and everything else. But this marks the end of the Bretton Woods system. And his plan now focuses on lowering taxes dramatically. It's honestly a really, really interesting plan so that more money stays in your pocket, less money goes out to our enemies in other countries. Secondly, wants to help us get higher paying jobs by closing the border and using a really revolutionary new work permit program to secure the border. And it's not getting coverage at all. Anyway, I would encourage you all to read it. It's a totally free report. I'm going to spend more time going through it and maybe even doing a few videos on it because I think it's important, and you guys should all check it out. And just we have it here. You can get it for free. Just go to redacted.inc, Trump tax plan. I think it's one of the best reports that I've done, especially when you understand how the Bretton Woods system has collapsed. And what we are seeing tomorrow with interest rates being slashed by the Fed is that moment, is the decline of the U.S. dollar. And really, it's going to, if we go through these 4 or 5 rate cuts that start tomorrow with the Federal Reserve, we are at the end of the U.S. dollar hegemony in the world as the world's reserve currency, as the leading dollar, as the leading power in the world. The U.S. dollar will decline in value. Inflation will continue to go up. And we are sitting in a really, I think, a really interesting moment as the Bretton Woods system starts to collapse right now in front of our eyes. The rise of the BRICS nations. But again, liberal media won't cover it at all. They're not going to give any praise to Trump's tax plan at all. It's actually a pretty, I don't want to say genius because I hate to throw that word around. But when you look at the details of this and what it does with tariffs, it's actually really interesting. Really, really interesting. But I bet no one's even reading it. No, CNN's certainly not covering it, and they're not going to look at it. But anyway, check it out. Hey, we're going to do some super chats here in a second. Grover's excited up there. And let's see here. Noel says Trump is not going to lower taxes if it does get past Congress and abolish the IRS, Federal Reserve, and income tax. We'll see. If he can get it past Congress, we'll see what kind of Congress he has. We'll see about that. Eric says, unless there's no taxes on my wages, period, removal of the illegal Fed and IRS. Yeah, remove the Fed and the IRS. Can we abolish the IRS? We'll see. Tariffs always fall on the customer. But if it's a lot of Chinese imports, right now we're running a massive trade deficit, massive. So we are sending out, we are taking in way more than we're sending out to these other countries. So if we can reverse that in any kind of appreciable way and bring manufacturing up to par with the rest of the world, that would be incredible. So more on that. Anyway, let's do some super chats here in a second. But first, I'm going to tell you about our friends over at the Wellness Company. America, listen up. It's no coincidence that we're seeing a surge of new health crises just as critical decisions need to be made. First, a massive COVID-19 spike. Right now, 1.2 million new cases being reported daily. Then the World Health Organization declares monkeypox global health emergency. Now we're gearing up for this bird flu summit, which is just days away. They're setting the stage for more of these pandemics. And they're not just coincidences. They are calculated moves to keep us in fear and control. Ask yourself, were you prepared for the last pandemic? 48% of Americans don't have any emergency supplies ready in their house, according to the National Center for Disaster Preparedness. We saw how the medical and pharmaceutical industries failed us the last time. They left us to fend for ourselves. Do you really want to count on them again? So our friends, led by Dr. Peter McCullough over at the Wellness Company, have a special pack that includes ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, Z-Pak, Tamiflu, and a nebulizer, treatments they don't want you to have. Forget waiting in line or struggling to find a doctor who's actually going to prescribe these things to you. Just have one in your house, always ready to go. It's their contagion emergency kit. We've got one upstairs in our supply closet, just ready to go. Just keep it there in case, because you know how difficult these things were to get the last time. Be proactive. Keep one in your house just as a preventative measure. Go to twc.health/redacted to get your contagion emergency kit today. And if you use the promo code redacted at checkout, you'll save $30. You'll save $30. twc.health/redacted. You only need to order one of these things, right? Keep it in your house. Keep it for years and just protect yourselves. All right, let's see. The poll, 92% still say 92%. Do you support U.S. getting more involved in the Middle East? And where can you check on super chats? I always can't find it in here. David, do you know where that stuff is?
Yeah. So if you go to, pull it up here. In the dashboard, go to YouTube Studio and then click on there's a little go live up in the top right on the dashboard, the little circle.
Yeah.
And if you go in there, you should see viewer activity.
Okay.
They're in there.
Got it here. Let's see. See if we got any super chats here.
Yeah, I got one from Smokey SGT, $20. Says, we are not free. Freedom is an illusion that we are allowed to think we have.
Thank you for that. Screwy Louie says, go after Tom Hanks next. Wouldn't you love to know, that whole story when Tom Hanks and his wife, remember they got COVID and then it was all over the news and how they thought they were going to die. Remember that whole thing? That whole propaganda thing that they rolled out. Tom Hanks, America's Mr. Rogers, got COVID. He was terrified. He almost died. We should all, oh my God, even Tom Hanks gets COVID. It's amazing. The 8% are farm bots, Neil Murray says. Yeah. William B., my monkey got people pox. That's right. We'll see. Flounder Ride says, cash is king. Kim Lee says, redacted, interview the Israel guys. Israel guys, okay. Israel guys. Wonder where they're from.
We're the non-war guys. That's...
Yeah. Yeah, I'll interview the non-war people who want to end it. So Kamala was asked today about the war because all these pagers exploding today. So she was asked in the CNN interview today, how do we end this war? She's like, this has got to be a priority. We got to get a ceasefire. We got to get a ceasefire, right? She's a deep state warmonger. She does not want a ceasefire. She wants to be a part of an all-out war in the Middle East, and she'd love nothing more than to be a part of the neocon agenda, which is to go to war against Iran. And to go against...
It's like you got a bunch of soldiers and they're getting ready to go fight, and you're handing them weapons and saying, now don't use these on those people. Okay, yes. We're going to give you these guns, but don't you use them on these people. You just you just have the gun.
Yeah.
Because that's basically what we're doing.
The Virgo on fire. Yes. So to answer your question on the locals community, we have a lot planned, and I promise you we're about to launch a lot of new stuff coming forward here. With the big move and the building of the new studio, things got a little sidetracked, but you have our word that a lot of that is coming. And especially interviews that only you get, content interviews that only you get, special live streams, all of that is coming. I promise. Hand to the heavens, I promise. This is something, in fact, David and I just had a big meeting about it last week as we map all of this out. So that is coming, absolutely. Which earphones do you use? They look comfortable. Yeah, because of my time in television, working for many years for Fox News and so forth, I had an IFB that I would keep, so my producers could talk to me in my ear. But I don't know what they're called, David. I flip them upside down, then I put them in backwards so that they'll work in my ear.
Yeah, they're called Me6, MEE6 earbuds. So you can get them on Amazon.
Gotcha. Okay. You bet. Virgo on fire. Man, Virgos are on fire already. I can't imagine what it would if you're actually on fire, because you guys are on, or I married a Virgo, so I know what that's like. Clayton has backwards ears. Yeah, I just take my ears off and flip them over because they're so gigantic. I put them over. So thank you guys. NBA Hype says, how can we protect Trump? I mean, well, as you heard Michael Scheuer say, this is the most troubling part, that they're probably done using guns to try to take out Trump. Now what are they going to do? Here's an ex-CIA guy saying they've tried the guns piece of this. That's terrifying. What will be the next step? That these clowns and Mayorkas last week wouldn't approve additional Homeland Security and Secret Service detail for President Trump after the guy was shot.
I'll tell you what. I mean, I'd be getting food testers and like, you're going to eat this before me. And I'm staying in a bunker, and everything I do is going to be via camera from now on.
It's insane. I mean, I still couldn't believe RFK Jr. I mean, RFK Jr. was asking for Secret Service detail. He had none. His uncle and his father were assassinated, of course, by the CIA. So no wonder they didn't want to. So he was denied. Biden kept denying his request to have Secret Service protection. I guess when the CIA, kills your uncle, they're not going to give you Secret Service protection. Anyway, thank you guys so much for joining us today. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I kind of side with Ron Paul on that one. Ron Paul was offered Secret Service, but he denied it because he didn't think we should be paying the $50,000-$60,000 a day that it would take. So he hired his own, And with private security, with all that's going on, you're actually going to get better quality because you know what I mean? You're not going to have people that are politicized. I mean, the Secret Service is obviously hijacked. They're not doing their job. So I would feel much safer with private security, with just like to get the best private security detail you can get. And those are your guys.
Exactly. I think you're right about that. Brett Green, $5 super chat says, would love to hear you sing sometime. You offered to sing for Natalie, but you have a wonderful singing voice. No, I don't. I can sing in a low register. So give me like a Neil Diamond song. Like I can sing in that, or like a country song or something. I can sing or like Johnny Cash. Like that, I feel like like that.
Because you're mine, I walk the line.
And I fell into a burning ring. Yeah, like that low. That's about all I can do. Rakina says, looking forward to reading the tax plan. Thank you so much. Indeed. Thank you, Rakina. Appreciate it. Thank you, guys. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern time. We've got a lot of guests lined up for you tomorrow here on the show. Really looking forward to it, and it's going to be an explosive show. So hopefully in a good way, because we'll reveal some details, not in a bad way. We will do that. Thank you guys so much. Have a great afternoon. I got to go pick up my daughter, and hope you guys have a wonderful night.